Greetings to you, dear viewers. You're watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is weekly program Future Africa, and I am Fantam Belete hosting the program. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Yasin Hussein, Assistant Professor of Governance and Federalism, who joins me from Arbaminch University. In our discussion today, we're going to talk about the national dialogue in Ethiopia. Dr. Yasin, thank you for joining and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Fantam, for having me.
To begin with, when do countries hold national dialogue and what are forcing factors to do it?
First of all, I'd like to appreciate your choice of the issue, national dialogue, as we are now doing this, important endeavor. So it's timely to discuss about national dialogue. Saying this, the states, in many states of the world, in many instances, engaged in national dialogues for many different reasons. The first one is when states are in times of political crisis, when there is political crisis in a given state, and when there are also when states are in conflict and in post-war situations. National dialogues are taken as one way out to get out of such conflicts. And also when states needs a far-reaching political change process, they also engage or they conduct national dialogues. So there are many different reasons that push states towards national dialogue. The most important one being to have a political consensus at a state level.
Currently, Ethiopia is working on organizing to have this national dialogue. Is it necessary for Ethiopia to hold this national dialogue?
Of course, it's very much necessary for Ethiopia to have this national dialogue. For me, it is, it's necessary more than ever because the political condition that we are in, the conflict we have been the last, for the last, I can say, 50 years, Ethiopia's political environment was not, a kind of political environment where people agree on the fundamental political issues of the state. So for me, it's more than necessary, and it is a timely decision on the side of the government to have such a national dialogue. Ethiopia's government courage to initiate this process is both timely and necessary.
A national dialogue commission was established to run the dialogue. What are the major tasks of this commission?
The commission has been established by, the parliament, which makes the initiative a government initiative, which is by itself has a huge impact on the success of the national dialogue. Though there are also some, worries, but the national dialogue basically is tasked with to serve as a system of deliberations. The National Dialogue Commission of Ethiopia is tasked with many important mandates. The first one being is to serve as a system of deliberations, so that there will be talk among stakeholders, political stakeholders, to improve the relationship between the public and the government, and so to serve as a forum of deliberations where issues of fundamental importance for the states are discussed. So from this point of view, it is a way of attracting stakeholders who have a say on Ethiopian politics, on the Ethiopian state, so that they can come together and discuss issues around. And most importantly, the National Dialogue Commission has the mandate, or it is expected from this national dialogue. If it is successful, with its successful completion, it's expected to have a new political dispensation for Ethiopia. So the national dialogue is expected to deliver on all these tasks, to fulfill all these responsibilities, and finally give us, the necessary consensus that we are in need of.
The bill setting up the National Dialogue Commission states that the commission is meant to pave the way for national consensus and keep the integrity of the country. How is it working then?
Yeah, the national dialogue for me is one of the most important initiatives by the reform government. One of the most important initiatives. Why? Because with this national dialogue, there is a chance to talk together on the fundamental nature of the state. We are not, in agreement about the very nature of the state, the national symbols. And there are many other issues that we disagree on. So the national dialogue will serve as a forum where different political stakeholders, both centrifugal forces and centripetal forces are around in Ethiopian politics. So these political forces come together so that they can agree on the very character of the state. They can discuss. They can arrive at a consensus on what should be the nature of political relationship that we need to have among ourselves. What kind of power should be given for the government? What kind of political system should we follow? What form of government should we adopt? Shall we follow federalism? Shall we follow unitary system? There are many different issues at stake. So the national dialogue finally will help us to maintain the integrity of the state, and this will be achieved if we are, opportunate enough to arrive at a consensus. At least we need to agree on the issues that we disagree on. This is also another important starting point as a state to arrive at a political consensus. So from this point of view, the national dialogue will help this endeavor in arriving at a political consensus and finally, thereby maintain the integrity of the state.
Well, how can the hope for positive and lasting change in the country critically be achieved in this national dialogue?
Yeah, the success of national dialogue depends on many factors. We cannot say the very, just having a national dialogue will give us success. No, this is not a right way of looking at it. For me, for the national dialogue to be successful, every stakeholder has its own responsibility. The government has its own responsibility. The opposition parties has their own responsibility. The people at large will have, their own responsibility. This is a kind of, a concerted effort must be there for the success of the national dialogue. So if we use this national dialogue, if we are really, really believe in this national dialogue, if we contribute our share without hesitation, we can achieve, a successful national dialogue, thereby achieve a new political beginning for Ethiopia. So the success factors are different. The political context is one. There are many other factors that we can discuss later.
In Proclamation 1265, 2014, the Ethiopian government commits itself to create a diverse and inclusive national dialogue commission with 11 commissioners. However, some are skeptical about the authenticity of its commitment. What is your comment on this?
Yeah, when we see the way the national dialogue is initiated, how the parliament established this national dialogue, there are some doubts. Skeptics also have their own doubts on the process, the very process. But for me, the national dialogue, the very courage that the government took to have this national dialogue is commendable for me, because no government in Ethiopian history has this kind of courage in establishing a national dialogue commission. Take, for instance, the previous regime. While after defeating the Turk regime, when they entered into Addis, they immediately convened the peace and reconciliation kind of national dialogue. But the process was very much, controlled by a single, so to say, political party, which was TPLF. So at the time, the process was very much under the control of even one single party, which dominates. Even the political forces were not that much, reflecting the political pluralism in Ethiopia at the time. So, for me, the government's courage in initiating this commission, in establishing this commission by the very initiative is appreciable. So we need to appreciate that. We have to begin from that. Then, yes, we can ask many different questions. There is no perfection. There is no perfection. The government has its own worries. As a government, there are worries. Some people consider national dialogue as, they want to exploit or use it as a kind of power sharing. So national dialogue is not power sharing. Power sharing arrangements can go hand in hand, national dialogues. But in Ethiopian context, the government intention was not that. So skeptics always have their own criticism. They put forward, some, ideas on the credibility of the government endeavor. But we need to accept, that there might be some issues around. For instance, the way the commissioners are, elected. But as it happens now, for me, 75% of the commissioners are, we can agree on, the majority of the commissioners that we have. For instance, take the Professor Masfunari, if I'm not mistaken his name. So he's, one of the giants of Ethiopian politics. He has, the audacity to hear from different political parties. He's I think, dependable enough to hear from different voices, from different perspectives. So I think we need to accept such kinds of initiatives and work on some of the downsides on it.
For the national dialogue to have the desired reconciliatory effect, what should be the composition of this commission?
Yeah, the commission is already organized. As I already mentioned, there are comments on the way the commission was organized, but still there are chances. So that will help us to engage other forces, forces that are not interested to be part of this national dialogue. So these consultations must be continued. There are political forces, for instance, the dominant political forces, like, for instance, we can mention some Oromo political parties. We can also mention some centrist political parties. From both sides, there are political parties that are not interested to be part of this process. So there must be efforts by the National Commission to engage these political forces, to make them, to convince them, so that they will contribute their own share for the success of this national dialogue. Because the very purpose of national dialogue is to create the arena for different political positions to come together and discuss about the issue, the most fundamental issues for the state. So these kinds of efforts must be continued, and I think the Commission is working on this. There are attempts from the side of the Commission to convince those who are not part of this process, and so this must be continued.
Are there any monitoring mechanisms to make sure that the National Dialogue Commission is discharging its mandate in a transparent and credible way?
Yeah, one of the factors for the success of national dialogues is the presence of controlling mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms. When we see this in our case, the very fact that the commission was established by the parliament, or it is accountability to the parliament is one monitoring mechanism. So the commission reports to the parliament. So the parliament is, the representative of the people of Ethiopia. So the Ethiopian people are monitoring the national dialogue. And there are also other ways that we can see whether the commission is, fulfilling its responsibility transparently. So there are, I think, different forums, different public relation workers by the national dialogue that, inform, aware the people, the public at large about the work they have been doing in many different outlets. So it's not something, hidden. The way they're working their job is very much transparent, and every citizen can, have information about the way they're, conducting their activities.
What should be done to ensure national ownership and make the dialogue fully an Ethiopian process and not an external imposition?
One thing special about Ethiopian National Commission is it is the very initiative of the government. So this absolutely makes it a nationally owned process. No external actor, no foreign state give us this task of doing national dialogue. It is wholly nationally owned process. So from this point of view, we can surely argue that it is a nationally owned process. The very initiative is taken by the government. So Ethiopia's national dialogue is very much, under the control of the state. That means the people of Ethiopia are the owners of this national dialogue, as it was established by the parliament itself. So the issue is the issue is not for me whether it is a nationally owned process or a foreign, an externally induced process. For me, the issue is to what extent it engages, the diverse political forces in Ethiopia, both inside and outside.
By whom should the agenda for this national dialogue be set, and will indigenous practice of conflict resolution play any part for this national dialogue?
Yeah. The agenda setting process is the very, the most important task of the National Dialogue Commission. So it is the commission which is responsible for doing this task. The government is not, some people argue the government is giving some, agenda. No, this is not the right way of understanding it. The commission is doing its own work, and they're, consulting with different stakeholders on the agenda. What should be the agenda that must be discussed under this, dialogue forum? So the mandate is for the commission, and the commission has been working on this for the last 2 years as part of its preparatory works. So the National Commission is the one who is responsible to choose the agenda by consulting with, of course, different stakeholders of our political, environment. So the government has no place in setting the agendas. If the government is part of this process of setting the agenda, then that will be, that will not be a genuine process of dialogue. It will curb its success in the future. So I think on this regard, it's clear that the commission is the one who is doing this job. So I think it is nice, and it will affect the success of the process at the end of the day.
Well, some people claim that the Ethiopian government should ensure that the national dialogues are not perceived as an end goal, but rather as part of a larger transitional roadmap. Would you explain this, please?
Yeah, sometimes national dialogues, depending on the mandate they have, depending on the purpose they are established for, they might be part of a larger political change processes, or it might single-handedly dwell on some important political issues. So it depends. It depends on the choice of the state. So for us, the national dialogue in Ethiopia is tasked with some important mandates, as we already discussed. So it depends on the mandate. The very mandate of the commission decides this. So in our case, the task of the national dialogue is to finally arrive at a new political dispensation. What does that mean? It depends. So we will see on whether this national dialogue ended up with just creating, kind of consensus among political parties, or will it bring fundamental changes on the very nature of the state, including it's the political system that we follow, the form of government that we will have, and many other fundamental political issues of the state. So it depends.
From where should the source of financing be for this national dialogue? For the whole process of this national dialogue, where should be the finance source?
Yeah, these kind of national dialogue processes are expensive ventures. They are expensive. It needs a lot of money. So there are a lot of expenditures around. So one of the success factors is who supports it. So the government, I think, for me, the government should be courageous enough in supporting this national dialogue as an independent. Without influencing the working of the national dialogue, the government should be the one who supports this national dialogue. And other international organizations can also be part of this, support. We can have their support without necessarily accepting their agenda. So they can support it in many other cases. In most the United Nations organization, the different organizations of United Nations, and many other states, even European states, support different national dialogues around the world. So it's not a problem to accept their support. The problem will be to accept their agenda with their money. So taking this care, we can have the support of international donors and many other states. So the thing is, it is expensive venture. It needs a lot of money. So the source can be different, both from the government side or from abroad. But we need to be careful about the agenda. Some want us to influence through their money. So we have to be careful about that.
Wonderful. Can we say that this national dialogue provides an opportunity for building a new political culture in Ethiopia?
Definitely. For me, even the very start, the very start of this national dialogue process is one way to get out of the old-fashioned, traditional, political zero-sum game political culture that we have in the past, because discussing different issues on one, sitting on a table is a step towards any political culture. In our culture, we are clever enough in defeating our enemies. We are not clever enough to discuss with our enemies. Even we are citizens of one state. We are living on one country, but still there is this kind of you have to defeat your enemy. So our political mentality is very much based on this assumption. If you want to win, you have to defeat your enemy. But in a modern political culture, where politics is more of an art than a science, political actors engage in politics not to defeat, but to put forward their ideas, their policies. So policy choices will be there. Policy choices will be the one that we will have from different political actors if we have this kinds of political culture. But in our political culture, we are not in a position to hear from others. So open-mindedness is not the characteristics of our political culture. We are closed. We want to hear from ourselves, not from others. So it will open, you need to hear from your, opponent. What is the political position of your, other political parties other than yours? What is the position of, other groups? For instance, we have, different ethnic groups, different religious groups. We just want to push our own agenda without giving ear to others. So this must be changed. And I think the national dialogue will give us, this opportunity to discuss and to hear from others. So that I think it is one step forward in changing our traditional political culture, which is, not only the political culture of Ethiopia, but also Africa. So we have to have this culture. And the national dialogue will contribute a lot in this regard.
So what do you recommend the Commission, the government, and other political opposition parties to make this national dialogue successful?
Yeah, to make this national dialogue successful, every stakeholder has its own responsibility, as we already mentioned. The government has its own task, the opposition parties, and the public at large. So my comment is first to trust the process. We have to trust the process. Yes, there might be some downsides of this process. For instance, the time period for for the National Commission is 3 years. Now it's already completed 2 years of its term. So there is still a possibility to extend on the term of the National Commission, even it is under the proclamation, I think. So the National Commission must now, I think it is time now to engage into the very dialogue process. So it takes more time on the preparatory workers. Yes, the preparatory stage is important because every national dialogue has these 3 stages: the preparatory stage, the dialogue process, the dialogue itself, and the implementation period. So the preparatory time is now ended. They will start, the real dialogue process on the coming year, I think. So they have to push on other political parties that are not interested in be part of this national dialogue. So they have to work on that. That is important because the more political voices we have, the more the success of the national dialogue will be. So that is important on the side of the Commission. On the side of the government, there must be, kind of support which is necessary from the government side. The one is finance, because there are some issues of finance raised by the Commission. It is run out of budget, so the government should support the national dialogue. The other important thing is the political condition that we are in. The government should continue on talking with armed groups as it has done with in the previous time. We need to, because for the success of the national dialogue, there must be a relatively stable political and security environment. So the government should strongly work on that. Otherwise, the very process of national dialogue will be curbed, and we will not have the chance to really have a sober discussion under this national dialogue process. So the government should work on that, and from the people at large. So from the public at large, it's expected, especially the role of intellectuals is important in this regard, because we have to share. We have to be optimistic about the national dialogue, and we have to help in a way that we can, because this national dialogue is not for the government. This is for the people of Ethiopia. So as a state, to have a working democracy, to have a lasting peace, there must be, our share. So we have to comment. So there might be political differences around, still this national dialogue will help at least a little in pushing our political culture to a better end. So it's expected more than others from intellectuals, and the public at large can be part of this process by actively participating in many deliberations that will be organized by the National Commission from Kabale, Warada, and zonal level. So there will be, consultations or deliberations, meetings will be there. So we have to be active participants of this processes, so that we can voice our idea, we can have our say in the process.
Dear esteemed viewers, this is the end of the first episode of our discussion with Dr. Yasin Hussein. Do not forget to follow the second episode. Till then, bye.